we are finally getting closer to a very important number, and it's a big one. It's so big that it makes perfect sense why this number would have been deliberately excluded from the Attorney General Barr's letter about the Mueller report if, and I'm only saying if here, if the Attorney General's letter was actually trying to make the Mueller report seem as favorable to the president as possible. If that's what the Attorney General was trying to do, and we don't know if he was, but if that's what the Attorney General was trying to do in that letter, one thing he wasn't going to mention is how long the Mueller report actually is, how many pages. Most of the news media seem to treat the Attorney General's 4-page letter about the Mueller report to actually be the Mueller report, which, of course, no one in the news media has actually seen. So what if, on the first page of the Attorney General's 4-page letter, instead of writing, "This report is entitled Report on the Investigation into Russian Interference in the 2016 Presidential Election," what if instead of that, the Attorney General wrote, "This 900-page report is entitled Report on the Investigation into the Russian Interference Investigation of the 2016 Presidential Election"? 900 pages would have staggered the news media. 700 pages would have staggered the news media. 500 pages would have staggered the news media. 500 pages would have humbled the news media into instantly realizing that a 4-page letter that they were holding was not a 500-page Mueller report. But the page count was not included in the Attorney General's letter describing the Mueller report, and Ari Melber was the first to raise this in his superb coverage of the Attorney General's letter on Sunday night, and we discussed it here on this program for the last 2 nights briefly. And finally today, we are moving closer to an answer because the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, Jerry Nadler, agrees with Ari Melber that it is an important question. So important, it is one of the things that he discussed today with Attorney General William Barr in what Chairman Nadler said was a 10-minute phone call. This is what the Chairman Nadler told reporters about that phone call this afternoon.
I had a phone call with the Attorney General, and I asked him about the length and breadth of the Mueller report. He told me it was a very substantial report, one that, in my judgment, a 4-page summary cannot begin to do justice to.
How many pages is the report? When you say very substantial, do you mean hundreds of pages? How many pages?
I can't say that, but it's very substantial.
And you know how many pages it is?
Yes.
Fox News
it's
is
very
saying
substantial.
700.
What?
Fox News is saying 700. Is that accurate?
More than that?
I can't comment today.
Very substantial, less than 1,000.
Oh, I would think so.
First thing he said, very first thing he said, I asked him about the length. I asked him about the length and breadth of the Mueller report. And so now we know. It's less than 1,000 pages. That means it could be the longest special prosecutor's report in history. If Fox News is right and it's 700 pages, that would make it the longest special prosecutor's report in history. Kenneth Starr's report on President Clinton that led to the impeachment of President Clinton in the House of Representatives was 445 pages, all of which was released to the Congress and the public. We don't know how many pages of the Mueller report describe and analyze Lester Holt's interview with President Trump after the president fired FBI Director James Comey. But in an exclusive interview with Lester Holt today, James Comey said he is eager to see that and everything else that's in the full Mueller report.
I don't know what the special counsel found, and I'm prepared, I hope everybody is, to wait and get the transparency that we need.
Do you ask yourself why Mueller did not subpoena President Trump to try to get to the heart of this intent question on obstruction?
Yes, I do. And I don't know the answer to that. I have the same question about how the Attorney General could resolve the question, which he says in his letter turns upon the president's intent without the president having been asked what his intent is.
The clearest picture we have of the president's intent actually came in Lester Holt's interview immediately after the president fired James Comey.
In fact, when I decided to just do it, I said to myself, I said, you know, this Russia thing with Trump and Russia is a made-up story.
What did you think when you heard that?
I thought that's potentially obstruction of justice, and I hope somebody is going to look at that. Again, the president appears to be saying, I don't know what's in his head, which is why I can't reach the conclusion. What he appears to be saying is, I got rid of this guy to shut down an investigation that threatened me.
Now remember, James Comey is a former U.S. attorney in the Southern District of New York. He's a former Deputy Attorney General of the United States who, in effect, served as acting Attorney General when Attorney General John Ashcroft was hospitalized. James Comey was the director of the FBI, appointed by President Obama. Most of his service has been in a Republican-run Justice Department, and even James Comey, with all that experience, is mystified, as the rest of us are, about why Robert Mueller did not reach a conclusion on the obstruction of justice investigation of the president.
The purpose of a special counsel is to make sure that the politicals, in this case the Attorney General, doesn't make the ultimate call on whether the subject of the investigation, the President of the United States, should be held criminally liable for activities that were under investigation. And so the idea that a special counsel wouldn't reach the question and hand it to the political leadership doesn't make sense. I'm not prejudging it, I'm just saying it doesn't make sense on its face. I don't know why he didn't here, and I don't know what combination of law and fact led him to that, which is why I'm going to wait and hear the explanation, which I hope will come.
To President Trump and his supporters who claim there never should have been an investigation, James Comey said this.
I don't know what people are thinking saying we shouldn't have investigated, right? Remember where this started. In late July of the election year, we knew the Russians were engaged in a massive effort to hurt Hillary Clinton and help Donald Trump. And then we learned that a Trump campaign advisor had spoken to a Russian operative about the dirt they had on Hillary Clinton before any of us knew anything about it. How on earth would the FBI leave that alone?
Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on the button below for more from The Last Word and the rest of MSNBC.